In February in 2012, I'm called back to the mammography unit. A handsome young doctor tells me that they just want to make sure that nothing that shouldn't be there is in my breast. Then I see it, a grey shadow at the bottom of my left breast. It's so small, just half an inch long. The doctor tries to get some tissue out of it, but the shadow is making resistance. He hits again. Suddenly, the doctor's attitude changes and he becomes very protective. That makes me panic. In the following weeks, I hit myself and everyone around me, and it feels like I'm sinking down in bottomless, disgusting mud. Working with Robert Bosnak's method, Embodied Imagination, helps me to get my feet back on solid ground.
Everybody who has cancer is not just traumatized by the cancer, but also traumatized by the diagnosis of cancer. And that makes you retreat into a smaller self. That's what trauma does. You retreat into a smaller self and you split everything off that is seen as not essential by self. And in order to go to healing, this has to open up again, and unknown parts of self have to enter, because there is a whole adaptation that now needs to take place to the new situation. If you don't adapt to having cancer, I think that going through the cancer is much more difficult. And if you don't adapt to the fact that you're going to go and have radiation, then your body will resist the radiation, and it will be much more difficult to go through the radiation. And I also think that you will have less profit from it. The people who don't do this work, who stay in this frightened state, and their positive thinking doesn't help anything. Positive thinking of this is all good, I'm going to get through this, all that kind of stuff, that doesn't go deep enough. So you have to allow all these other forces to come in, and many of them are frightening. But a lot of people, especially in the arts, have been infected by a disease which is called the New Age, which believes that we can understand why people get ill from a psychological perspective. And I think that is a dreadful thing. There was Susan Sontag wrote a book about that, Illness as Metaphor, in which she fulminates against that, which she says that is horrible, and I totally agree with her. Because not only do you have cancer, but now you also feel guilty about having cancer, because, for instance, in your case, you may feel that you didn't live your creativity enough, and that's why you have cancer, and now you feel guilty on top of having cancer, and that's not useful.
No. No, it's useful with this imagery.
Yes, working with
that I got.
Yes.
From working with it.
Yes, and I think that was, I loved that dream. That was a beautiful dream.
It was very powerful.
You incubated that in Mexico.
Yes.
So, have you been working since with this glow around the body and these different anchor points, and what did that do to you? Because you're going to have radiotherapy next week, right?
Yeah. I start next week.
Yeah.
I continue to work, and it has made me, this calmness, I felt that. And no resistance against the radiation.
But you can still also feel that rage. See, that's very important. It's important to not lose the other ones, because otherwise you get back into positive thinking. That's not useful. So you have to feel all of them.
The rage,
Because if you can't feel the rage, and if you can't feel the struggle with death, and that there's a struggle with death involved, then it doesn't generate enough survival energy.
Yeah.
Because that struggle, that rage, is the rage to live.
Yeah.
And so that rage to live is very important. If you only do the sweetness of it, it's not going to do very much.
Yeah, I
See, that's your
Yes.
tendency.
Yes,
that's the same
that's right.
tendency. The dread of being pushed off,
Yeah.
and the dread to go to the full extent of your possibilities. And
Yeah.
part of your possibilities is that you have a very strong survival spirit.
Yeah.
And that survival spirit has to be felt.
Yeah, that's,
And the confrontation
that's
with death has to be felt.
Yeah.
Because if you don't feel that confrontation with death, it will not generate enough energy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bring that with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that needs more work.
More
because
work,
if you
yeah.
don't work that,
Yeah.
you won't bring it with you.
Yeah.
If you go now to the radiation, that will not be there. So you have to work that back into this glow. You have to work that back into the peace, because if you go, you get a tendency to move into positive thinking.
Yeah.
And we know from research that it doesn't work. Positive thinking doesn't work. And so you have to have the whole, all the elements, so that they can work together and form a whole composite, not just the positive part of a composite. Because the positive part of a composite feels great, but is impotent.
Yeah. The dream body becomes my lifeline during the whole period of radiation treatment. 15 minutes every evening I go through the different anchor points. And then, waiting for the radiation to start, I go through them again. I'm especially careful not to lose the fish, breaking its neck. I want to live and realize that this fight is essential. After the last treatment, a doctor and a nurse look at my breast, and they are both very surprised that they don't see any reddishness or chapped skin at all. I'm extremely grateful to my dream body that hold my hand all along.